Okay, so when we measure them, that's what we get. Now, how are we going to change this over? There's a couple of ways to do this. I like to do proportions for this too. It's another way. It's one of the reasons I put the similar figures thing in this lesson. If we want to change everything to decimals, that might be easier. Isn't a fourth of an inch, isn't that 0.25? Right? Okay. So you're allowed to use a calculator on this, because here's the deal. What if we make proportions and I put the scale drawing on one fraction, which would be 0.25, and what I'll do is I'll put inches on top and feet on the bottom. So in this fraction, I'm going to make it the scale fraction, and over here I'm going to make it the real. I'll put real, like real life size thing, okay? So 0.25 was this a fourth. I'm changing mine into decimals. And the feet was 3, right? What would I put over here if I want to do the top? Let me label each side. So let's say I'm doing the top here. That 1.5. When we measured it, it was 1.5 inches, and we want to know how many feet is that. So I'll call how many feet X, right? Because it's missing. I could put a question mark there, or we can just put an X instead of a question mark. If I do this, and I have a calculator, it becomes a really easy problem, doesn't it? Because what am I going to do? Anytime you see a fraction equal a fraction, you're going to cross multiply. You're going to say 0.25 times x, which would be 0.25x. And then on the other side, you're going to say 3 times 1.5. It's 4.5, isn't it? Okay, so 0.25x equal 4.5. How am I going to get x by itself when there's a decimal out front? What do you think, Chester? I see your hand up.
Would you divide it by 0.25?
Yes. Anytime you have two things multiplied together, the opposite of, if x is multiplied by anything, whether it's a decimal or a fraction, one thing you can do is just divide that number out. And we'll just divide the decimal out of both sides. A calculator would make this much easier to do, wouldn't it? And again, at some point, we'll go back to not using a calculator. But here, it makes kind of sense because we're getting yicky numbers, right? So somebody have a calculator to divide that out with? I have one if nobody else does. What'd you get?
0.18.
Is it 0.18 or just, I'm thinking it should be 18. Let's see. 4.5 divided by 0.25. It's 18. I probably just accidentally hit a decimal button or something. You get 18. So the top is actually 18. So I'll write that in blue here. So if I make a fraction and I put my inches on top, my feet on the bottom, and I describe the scale, this is called the scale here, right? So I'm just going to put the scale into this fraction. I just changed the 1/4 into 0.25. Now, if you have trouble with that, don't you have a calculator? You could say 1 divided by 4 is 0.25. So it's okay to use your calculator here. And then the real measurement was 1.5, and I'm just trying to find this thing on the bottom. And if you notice, we've done a lot of things so far where we had a fraction equal a fraction, and even on your summer packet you had some of this. And I noticed a lot of you didn't know how to handle it on the summer packet. But cross-multiplying is one way that you can do it really quickly. So you just multiply the diagonals, put it on one side, put an equal sign, multiply the other diagonal, put it on the other side. Let's do the bottom now. Let me do the bottom in green. So I'm going to put inches on top and feet on the bottom. And I'm going to describe both the scale factor, the scale thing they gave me, and in one fraction. And on the other fraction, I'm going to put the actual measurements, so we'll just put the real measurements, okay? So again, what fraction am I going to put over here for the scale, this first fraction? What am I going to write there? 0.25 inches equal 3 feet. I'm not writing the inches and the feet in, am I? I have them on the side. I don't have to write them there. That's just for me to keep it straight because it gets really confusing, right? It gets confusing if you can't remember what's supposed to go where, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. My real measurement was what on the bottom?
3/4,
which was in a decimal. 0.75. You could use fractions here. They get pretty icky pretty fast, but I'll do I'll do this one as a fraction in a minute in case
you would have to do a fraction in a fraction.
But it would still, we'll do it just to show you that you can still do that, okay? Because it's pretty easy still. Now, I don't know how long that is in feet, so I'm just going to call that x. What do I do next once I get it set up? Let me call somebody. Quinn? Cross multiply. So 0.25 times x is 0.25x. Now I'm going to put my equal sign. I'll use a different color here. Now I'm going to multiply the other diagonal. 3 times 0.75. I'm going to write it down just so in case you're struggling and you want to go back and watch this video, you can actually, pull this up and see where I got the numbers. Now I'm going to go ahead and multiply. What is 3 times 0.75? It is 2.25. I just use my calculator there. How am I going to get x by itself here? Somebody raise their hand to tell me. I'm trying to call somebody that I haven't heard from yet. Anybody feel brave about telling me how to get x by itself? Huh? Yeah. When you rewatch it, though, it appears a little at a time. Reagan?
I am so lost.
Okay. We'll do another. Let me finish this one up, and then we'll do another one, okay? And that way you can watch this. I'm trying to get x by itself. It's multiplied by 0.25. What do I do to get rid of? Yeah, since these two things are multiplied together, we need to divide the 0.25 on both sides.
And it equals 4.
Okay, if you divide that out, it's 4.
Yes.
I thought it would be 9.
Yeah, it's 9.
Let me do it on the calculator. 2.25 divided by 0.25 is, I messed up.
Oh, it is 9.
Yeah, I was just thinking, how many quarters go into $2.25? That's how I think about it. And 4 quarters to $1, so it's got to be 8 for $2 and then another quarter. Okay, so let's do this. Make sure you're really focused because it's just something you got to really focus. Okay, so we had the trapezoid. They gave us the scale for this, and they said the scale was 1/4 of an inch is equal to 3 feet. So every time I measure 1/4 of an inch, it's 3 feet. Make sure that if you don't understand it, you're really focused. Some of you tell me you don't understand it, you're not even looking at me right now. Okay? If you don't understand, make sure you're looking because I'm trying to go over it, and we'll do some more of these. So this was the sides were an inch, right? All right. So I want to know how long is that in feet. This is just a drawing, right? And I measured it's an inch, but in real life, how long would that side be, okay? Well, I can do this. I can say, okay, I've got to figure it out. I could kind of figure it out in my head. If 1/4 of an inch is 3 feet, wouldn't 1 inch be 4 of those 1/4 of an inches? Does that make sense? If you think about an inch, if it's divided up into 4 parts, isn't 1/4 mean divided into 4 parts? I can tell that my answer is probably going to be 12 here, but in case I don't want to think that way, here's what proportions help you do. They help you kind of organize it. Yes, Chester?
I thought it would be 12, but then when I rethought it over, isn't 12 4 times 3? Oh, it is.
You got it. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's say that you look at this and you don't want to think about there's 4/4 of an inches and and that's going to be I'll multiply by 4. Let's say all that doesn't make sense. So here's what we're going to do. You can organize your work in proportions. We're going to set a fraction equal to a fraction. And on one fraction, I'm going to write the scale factor here. So right here, I'm going to put just in one fraction, I'm going to put the scale factor. I'll do this even with, let me just leave it with fractions this time so there's one less step to have to do to solve this. I'm going to put 1/4 on the top because what I'm going to do on my fractions, on both of these two fractions, I'm going to put however many inches there are on top, and then I'm going to put how many feet on the bottom of the fraction. So 1/4 of an inch, here I'm just writing a reminder to myself. This is the one that describes the scale. 1/4 of an inch I'm going to put on top, and on the bottom I'm going to put the feet. That's 3 feet. So far, does everybody see? Thumbs up. Everybody show me. Thumbs up or down. Do you see how I set the fraction up? Thumbs up or down. Make sure I can see your hand. Okay. So that's just describing the scale, right? Now over here, I'm going to describe what I measured. I put real a while ago, but this is what I measured. When I measured that side over there, it was 1 inch, right? We all measured that? So I'm putting the inches. Remember over here, I said, oh yeah, I'm putting inches on top and feet on the bottom, because I could have done it the other way around. I'm just trying to remind myself how I set it up. How many inches did I measure? 1 inch, right? Do I know the feet? That's what I want to find, right? Isn't that what I'm trying to find? That's the missing piece. You might have seen books put a box there or a question mark, but what we do when we move into algebra is we just start calling the missing thing X. It just makes it easy to find. You know, always say, we're going to call it X instead of question mark. Okay, so everybody see how I set the second fraction up? Thumbs up if you see how I set the second fraction up. How do I solve that when a fraction equals a fraction? How have I been doing that, Paige?
I don't understand how you did the second fraction.
Okay. Hold on a second. Had asked earlier. I can cross multiply here. I can say, 3 times 1 is 3. So I'm multiplying diagonals, okay? 3 times 1 is 3, and then I'm going to put an equal sign, and let me go multiply the other diagonal. Now, we didn't change it to a decimal this time, but that's okay. What is 1/4 times x? Don't I just, when I have a number and a variable and I multiply them, don't just kind of smush them together and make it 1/4 x, right? Okay.